Hello and welcome to the Final Whistle, a Lewiston Tribune sports podcast. I'm Sam Taylor, sports reporter with the Lewiston Tribune and the Moscow Pullman Daily News. And with me, straight from Big Sky, Montana, and through Pullman, Washington, and now right here in Lewiston, Idaho, it's your voice of Bengal basketball, Austin Samuels. Austin, how you doing?
Hey, Sam, I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me on. I was super excited when you mentioned this. And had this idea to start this podcast. Thought it was an awesome idea. I'm super excited to be involved. So great to be here.
Sweet. We're happy to have you. Thanks for joining us. And we're excited to revive this podcast element of our sports staff. It's been a few years since we had something like this, and we're really excited to bring it back. I want to remind you that you can find this podcast, The Final Whistle, on anywhere you find your podcast, or wherever podcasts are sold, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, and online at lmtribune.com. So make sure to hit up all those spots to find, your preferred platform and listen to us, every week or so. And so we're here first and foremost to talk about the Lewiston High boys basketball team, who for the first time since 2017 qualified for the state tournament. And now, Austin, you followed both the Lewiston boys and the Lewiston girls, but you followed the state tournament bound team all year since October. And so just what can you tell us about what this year meant to Lewiston and what it was like following the team?
Man, it's been such a fun year to have the privilege to cover the Bengals. I've said it before, I'll say it again. This has been the most fun team in my years of experience in sports and radio. This team has been so much fun to cover this year. It was a great year of Lewiston basketball. I mean, to go 20-6 overall on the year. I mean, we'll get into the whole state tournament thing, I'm sure, here in a minute. But a great season overall. It's the first time they've won 20 games since their state championship season back in 08-09. So really a great year and a great jump up in year 3 under head coach Brooks Malm, which he's done an awesome job at Lewiston. It's been really fun to work with him also. Get back to the state tournament for the first time in 8 years. And just such a fun brand of basketball. I mean, you've been there. You've seen this team play a couple of times this year. They're so much fun to watch. I mean, the full court press, the full out pressure and intensity on the defensive side, even though they're not the biggest team in the world. They weren't this year, certainly. Still great defensively, and then on the offensive side, the pace they play with and all of the three-point shots. I mean, I got to work on my three-point call quite a bit this year because of how many threes they made. It was so much fun. So, absolute privilege to be covering Bengal basketball this year, no doubt.
Awesome. For those who maybe aren't familiar or just need a little refresher, Who are some of the names to know on the Lewiston basketball team this year, and just kind of what did they each bring to the court?
Oh man, I could go on and on about this one, but I mean the Bengals for the most part played 9 deep this year and a true 9-man rotation, which made them tough for a better part of the year because they play that style where they're going full court press the whole game and they're trying to up the tempo and get out in transition. And when you have 9 guys who can come in and do that, and you can cycle 4 in off the bench, that makes you really tough. You can keep guys fresh throughout the game. So they definitely have some depth. I don't need to go into all 9 guys, but they are all 9 contributors in their own ways. Royce Fisher's obviously the leading scorer of the Bengals. He averaged, I haven't looked at the final numbers, but right at 18 points per game is where I had him going into Friday's game against Columbia, which he's a terrific shooter, scorer, can get his own shots, can also play really good defense against some kids who are much bigger than him that he had to guard this year. He was terrific this year. Parker Bogar, one of the seniors, one of the 2 seniors on this team, great leader, huge cornerstone of that program. Brooks Malm loves Parker Bogar, and I know that he's sad that he just played his final game for him. But Parker did a lot on the offensive and defensive side. Again, he's kind of one of those guys that is 6'2", and he's technically a forward, which on a lot of teams he might be a guard, but he has to guard, the other teams opposing big man, which is certainly challenging because he's going against guys that are 6'5", 6'7", and having to try to slow them down. He's always been up to the task this year to do that. Those two are huge. They've got a whole host of guards that can score average right around 8 points per game or so, and have had their big games throughout the year. I mean, Blaze Hepburn, Dre Torpy, Jordan Walker is a guy I really like because he's like 5'8", 5'9". They list him at 5'9". I'm not sure if he's really 5'9", but he can really score it. He's super quick, can really shoot the ball from three, and he's also a great passer. He had a couple of games in the district championship series where he had 9 assists, and then the next game he had 10 assists against Sandpoint. So really complete team. Again, they go 9 deep, and each one of their 9 gives them something. But yeah, it was a really fun team this year for Lewiston. So,
and you mentioned 20 plus wins. How many wins total?
20 total.
20 total.
20-6.
20-6.
Final record. Yep.
You said first time since 2009 championship season.
Correct.
They got at least 20 wins.
Yeah. So even that last team that made it to the state tournament for Lewiston in 2017, which was a really good team with a couple of really good athletes. They had Riley Way on that team, which is Mason Way's older brother. Riley Way ended up playing baseball here at LC State and was one of the best middle infielders in LC State history. He was a great athlete, great basketball player. Tristan Bradley was also on that team in 2017. Great big man who played at LC State and was like, I think all conference, maybe all American for the Warriors. That team didn't even win 20 games. So yeah, it's the first time that they've gone over 20 since 08-09, since they brought home the last title in boys basketball. So
you look at their path to 20 wins, and it was certainly hard fought. The unique thing about the 5A, 6A Inland Empire League is that there's there's some 6A teams that they face 3, right?
Yep.
And then the rest is 5A, and so they're going up against Post Falls and some larger schools, and those certainly make for some exciting games. You look at the Golden Throne was early this year against Clarkston. That was certainly fun. 3-point barrage. The community's certainly gotten accustomed to what these Bengals were all about. Bonners Ferry, the Avista tournament, they play them tough. Mm-hmm. That was super interesting. Defending state champions that they were facing from that level.
They just won it again. Bonners Ferry did. Yeah. Back to back. It's a very good team for the Badgers. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, you got to see all these events, all these moments up close and personal. When you look back at this year, kind of what moments stand out and how did those kind of define the Bengals this year?
Oh, man. That's tough. I mean, obviously, you mentioned Golden Throne. That's an awesome experience. It was my first, experience at the Golden Throne, which it's really funny. You go into the P1 FCU Activity Center for Warrior games, and don't get me wrong, they get good crowds, sometimes, and I know the community supports them, but that gym does not pack out the way it does for Golden Throne. I mean, it was absolutely packed in there. I was on the side where I was broadcasting the game, where all the Bantam fans were. So during the girls' game, I mean, it was just so loud in my headset because all the fans were up and excited. But that was obviously super fun to be a part of Golden Throne. I know that the kids think that's really important and take a lot of pride and weight into that game. Obviously, they played super well in that game. One of their best offensive games of the year, one of their best overall games of the year, because Clarkston ended up being a pretty quality team and one of the contenders in the upper echelon of the 2A Greater Spokane League. So that's definitely one of them. Obviously, bringing home the district title was huge. I mean, that wasn't necessarily a game that was close and in doubt in the fourth quarter against Sandpoint, but just building to that moment, that anticipation. And I know all those guys for the Bengals have been working, since June and July. They talk about getting in the gym every single day and going and working out with each other and getting shots up. I know that's what they were looking forward to and building towards all season. So that was definitely a big moment. Those are probably two of them, but it's hard to even narrow it down that much. I mean, their win against Central Valley, thinking all the way back in the beginning of the season, that was one of their tightest games, one of their tightest wins of the year. And Dre Torpy had a great game in that one. So yeah, it's hard to choose, but a lot of fun moments this year, no doubt.
Absolutely. And then, you mentioned it, claiming the district title. They got to host it at Lewiston High School.
Huge.
And yeah, how huge was that? And just what did
Huge.
you see from the crowds as the year went on?
Huge. Well, yeah, it's funny. In the back half of the year, the crowds definitely grew in Bengal Gym, and the atmosphere got better and better. I'm not sure if part of that was because of the record, and that they saw that Lewiston was starting to pile up more and more wins, and okay, this team's for real. But also the opponents and things got more and more uh, serious, and the games got bigger throughout the year, or throughout the better latter half of the spring. When they were playing the 6A teams at home, they played all three of those teams at home: Post Falls, Lake City, and Coeur d'Alene. Good crowds for that one. And then obviously the 5A Inland Empire League opponents; those are league games. And yeah, building into the district championship series, I mean, it was pretty packed in there. It was a good atmosphere, and huge for them to play those games at home, because they always seem to shoot the ball better at home, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's where you practice. That's your home gym. That's where you're getting shots up, like I talked about in June and July, like they were doing. So they're super comfortable playing there. They seem to always shoot it better from three there, which was really big for this team this year that took a lot of threes and made a lot of threes. So that was a big deal. And the energy as well, to be able to play off of that and play their pressure and high energy style of defense that they do. It was a big deal for them to play at home during that district championship series and the whole district tournament also. So yeah.
That district tournament, as we mentioned, sent them to state down in the Boise area for the first time since 2017. Now, obviously, that game and then the consolation game didn't go as they would have liked, but just what was that atmosphere and that experience, and what did you see kind of from those kids that got to experience that? No one before in the last 8 years at Lewiston High on the boys basketball team has experienced going to a state tournament. And how did you see them kind of handle that, and just what benefit does that have for future years?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the benefit for future years is this is a really good team that took a huge step up this year. Going from 14 to 20 wins and getting back to the state tournament for the first time in 8 years. And this team brings a lot of pieces back for next year. They lose, two seniors, which both had a huge impact on this team. Mentioned Parker Bogar already, what he did on both sides of the basketball. They lose Drew Aldridge, who also played football for Lewiston. Good football player, good wide receiver for the Bengals. He was really good on the defensive end in basketball. He was usually got tasked with guarding one of the lead guards for the other team, if not the lead guard. They both played their hearts out in that last game, Bogar and Aldridge. I mean, Drew was diving on the floor for loose balls, scrapping for rebounds against a much bigger team, and forcing a bunch of turnovers. So they lose those guys, obviously, which will hurt, but they bring back a lot of talent for next year's team. So hopefully they can be back in the state tournament next year, and hopefully they've learned from the experience a little bit, and they'll be a little bit more ready to go, know what that atmosphere's like, know what it takes to get wins down there in state, because it's a little bit of a different animal. And they found out a little bit, when the 3-point shot isn't falling, it can be tough to get things done in the state tournament. But it wasn't the experience that necessarily they wanted. Obviously didn't play the best game against Twin Falls in that opening game. Really got, just dominated on the glass, 39-7. They got out-rebounded by Twin Falls in that opening game of the 5A state tournament, but really bounced back and played a much better game on Friday against Columbia. They were competitive in that game. They really played their hearts out. The offense looked a lot better too. The 3-point shots didn't fall until the end of the game, when it might have been too little too late. Otherwise, it felt like that could have been a Bengal win on Friday, but it was still a great experience for this team. Obviously, it's been 8 years, and they bring so much back for next year. Hopefully, they'll be back, and it'll be a big learning experience for them. So.
Absolutely. And just to recap, the final score for in the first round of the state tournament was Twin Falls 66, Lewiston 49.
Yep.
Is that correct? And so, and you really just saw Twin Falls. They were a lengthy lineup for sure.
Yeah.
Trey Billings, right, 6'5", was kind of a beast on the glass, and it was the game was what it was. It was definitely a challenge. But also all the same on the other side of the floor, you had Drew Aldridge, the senior that you mentioned, post 9 points.
Yep.
And, Parker Bogart provides some tough defense, as he has all year. And so I just want to shout out Parker Bogart and his family and supporters, and Drew Aldridge and his family and supporters, for your amazing high school careers. Coach Brooks' mom just couldn't stop raving about y'all any chance he could get in conversations with the Tribune and with you, Austin. And it's very clear that, you always want seniors to leave the program better than they found it. And I think we could both say, just as kind of outsiders looking in and you a little bit more on the inside, but that Parker and Drew have left Bengal basketball better than they found it.
No doubt. I would absolutely agree with that. Yeah.
And that's been super, super cool to see. And I think that this next crop of seniors, the next crop of the team, Royce Fisher, their, incredible shooter's going to be a senior. Got Jordan Walker coming up. He was a sophomore, right? So
he was a junior as well.
Junior as well.
So
okay.
That junior class this year is loaded.
Yeah.
They've got Royce, they've got Jordan, they've got Mason, they've also got Dre. They're all going to be seniors next year. And then obviously there were a couple of sophomores that were really impactful on this team. Also, Blaze Hepburn was a sophomore, so they've got 2 more years of him, which he could really grow to be a special player. Brady Rudolph was a big contributor off of the bench, guy who really took care of the basketball, played good defense, and wasn't hitting his shots at the end of the season, but is also a really good 3-point shooter and fit well with this team. So it's going to be a really exciting core group that's coming back next year, no doubt.
Absolutely. And then when we kind of to wrap this up, when you look at Bengal basketball, what part of the story, their story have we not touched on? Like what is missing when we ask about, when you look at the story of Bengal basketball, what makes it complete?
Man, I don't even know if I can fully answer that question, but I think it's, and these guys talk about it, all of the work that goes into it, because and well, there's kind of 2 parts of this. One, you do not become as good of a 3-point shooting team as Lewiston just overnight and without working really, really, really hard at it. This is a team that is one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the state. They made 11 threes per game, which is very high for high school basketball, and just under 40% from 3, which is also very high for high school basketball, better than a lot of college basketball teams shoot it from 3. So that does not happen overnight. The amount of work that they put into to become as good of shooters as they are, and to play together in the way that they do, because, again, they don't have a guy who's 6'6" that they could just lob it into at the block and say, hey, go get us a bucket. They've got to work together to manufacture open shots every possession down the floor, which is maybe a little bit more of a unique challenge than most teams have, especially that have a established big man in the post. So that's part of it. Also, and something that Brooks has talked to me about, is we're kind of in an era of basketball where, as he said it, where talent and me attitude outshines hard work and teamwork, right? We love to talk about, in the NBA, LeBron James had 40 some points and blah blah blah, or in college basketball, Cooper Flagg had 30 points and 15 rebounds, which both are great players. I'm not saying they're not, but to work as a team and to put in the amount of hard work as they do, and be so effective as a cohesive unit, and not care, right? Parker, one of the leading, players, leading scorers on that team, he didn't care if he had, 2 points, right? As long as he found a way to help his team win, did whatever it took to get the Bengals a win. And that's the way a lot of the guys on this team felt. So a little bit of that attitude. I don't know if that answers your question, but kind of those 2 things, I guess, are behind the scenes stories about this Bengal team this year. So.
Totally. Thank you. Yeah. Appreciate that, Austin.
Of course.
I want to ask about your experience as well, because, this was your first year calling Lewiston hoops for both the boys and the girls. And so just what was that experience like? Just, being new to this community, and just being a part of it in that way. And what do you appreciate about this past year?
Man, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun to grow and to meet people, to grow as a broadcaster, and also grow like the community, to be, talking to people's parents and getting to know people around the team. I got a fun introduction to the team before the season. They did like a charity event to raise money for the team for like travel costs, I think maybe, or uniforms or whatnot at the beginning of the year. And they did a trivia night. And they asked me to host the trivia night. So I came and hosted the trivia night and met some people and, kind of got inducted into the experience that way, which was super fun. And if they do that trivia night again next year, I would love to host it because it was a ton of fun. But yeah, being around the program was great, and growing as a broadcaster this year was awesome as well. And it is so much fun to broadcast for a team on the radio, which basketball broadcasting is sort of a high energy thing, anyways. But to broadcast for a team that's super high energy in every definition of the word on the defensive side, with their pace and with all the 3-point shooting. I mean, again, I got a lot of practice with my 3-point call, which was just so much fun. So it's been a great experience, and I am looking forward to it next year.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Austin.
Of course.
You can listen to Austin's broadcasts, when they come around, and during the week as well on the River 105.1. Do you want to promote that, Austin, if you'd like?
Yeah, so I work full time over at the McVay Entertainment Group, and my day job is I'm a DJ on the River 105.1, the radio station, from 10 a.m. to 2. So if you're listening in your car, you can listen, and you might hear me for a little bit. And then for sports, I mean, for Bengals sports, I think we're pretty much done for the year. But yeah, when football season rolls around, we cover all of the football games, home and away, on the River, as well as all the basketball games at home during the regular season, and then postseason, we do home and away. So there you go. There's my shameless plug.
Fantastic. Well, really appreciate you joining the inaugural episode of the revived Final Whistle, the revived version of the Lewiston Tribune Sports Podcast. Thank you so much for listening to this segment, and we'll be back in a second. Thank you so much. Moving up the hill in Lewiston to Lewis Clark State College, we've got, Warrior basketball is still going. Lewis Clark State men's and women's basketball is far from finished, having both qualified for the NAIA National Tournament after reaching the respective final and losing the final to the top 2 teams in their league. I mean, not just the league, but the entire nation.
Yeah.
Number 1 College of Idaho won the Cascade Conference on the men's side, and the number 2 Southern Oregon won the Cascade Conference on the women's side. But they had to get by the Warriors as their final opponent each time, and that boded well for the Warriors' postseason selection process. And so, looking at this, we'll have, the LC State men are bound for Georgetown, Kentucky, as the number 7 seed in that little quad. They'll face 10th seed St. Francis of Indiana at 5 p.m. on Friday. And the Warrior women, they're in Sioux City, Iowa, to play as the number 6 seed to play the 11th seed Columbia College of Missouri at 6 p.m. on Friday. So within an hour apart, you can have Warrior basketball, double the Warriors basketball on Friday, your heart's content. And with me to talk about that is Austin Samuels, who is we previously talked to just a few minutes ago, is the voice of of Bengal basketball, and he's also done a few games for the Warriors. And so, Austin, when you look at both these Warrior teams, just what really stands out, and what kind of seasons have both had?
Oh man, well they both had great seasons so far. Really awesome that they were both able to get to the Cascade Conference championship game. Again, like you mentioned, they both ran into, top 5 teams in the country on both the men's and women's side. College of Idaho they're ranked number 1 in the final NAIA top 25 poll. Southern Oregon, I want to say, is 3 or 4, but really, really tough teams that just neither Warrior team has been able to get over this year. On the men's side, they're 27-4 on the year, or 24-7, flip that around, on the year overall. But they're 0-3 against College of Idaho because, I mean, the Yotes have just been so tough this year, and they've been really tough against LC, and just a great program for the last however long, but really they've been dominant for the last 5 years. So, I mean, you take away those 3 games against College of Idaho, and the Warriors are 24-4, which, I mean, screams, top 15 team, and, a team that should be making it to the final site, getting to the Sweet 16. They don't call it the Sweet 16. I forget because of trademarks with the NCAA and whatnot. Yeah,
it's more fun
for unofficial purposes, it's the Sweet 16. But yeah, the Warrior men are having a great year. We'll see if they can get through their little 4 brackets region that Georgetown, Kentucky is hosting. They're going to have a tough game against St. Francis, which is based out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. The record doesn't jump off the page at you. They're just 17-12 on the year, but they played in a really, really good conference, the Crossroads League, which had a ton of teams ranked in the top 25. So they were getting tested night in, night out. That's going to be a tough game for them. They've got this guy, Luke Almodovar. I might be butchering that. Almodovar, I think. He's a 6'2 shooting guard. He's averaging over 20 points per game. It's going to be tough to try and slow him down in that one. And then Georgetown, obviously, they're the number 2 seed. They were ranked 4th in the last, NAI top 25 poll. So if the Warriors are going to make it out of that little quadrant and get to the Sweet 16, we'll call it for now, they're going to have to beat 2 really tough teams, and likely, I mean, Georgetown's not a shoo-in to beat LSU Shreveport, the 15 seed, but more likely than not, they're going to be playing Georgetown if they win. So they're going to have to win 2 really tough games. But it's been a great year for LC basketball on the men's side. And then for the women's side, obviously they're the 6th seed. They've had a great year as well. I mean, 25-6 for the Warriors, and you apply the same, principle to them and Southern Oregon. They played Southern Oregon 3 times and lost to them each time. So without those 3 losses, they're 25-3, which again screams really good team. Which Southern Oregon's just so tough to stop on the defensive side. Kind of similar to College of Idaho, they have like 5, 6, 7 players who can really score and hurt you on any given night. The Warrior women have been playing tremendous defense over the last month or so. Kind of midway through the season, they were struggling to guard a little bit in the early part of conference play. Some people were saying maybe they should stop playing that 2-3 zone, or that sort of matchup zone that they play, and abandon that because it wasn't working. But they've really tightened it up, and they've been playing really outstanding defense in that zone. They held Southern Oregon to, I think, 56 points in the title game. Unfortunately, they just didn't have the offense going themselves, but they played good enough on the defensive end to win that game against the Southern Oregon Raiders, which is a top 5 team in the nation. LC, they play Columbia in that first round. Really good team that's 28-3 this year. Didn't have the strength of schedule with their conference to get a super high seed. Obviously, they're an 11 seed taking on 6 seed LC. So that's going to be a tough matchup. And then Briarcliff, who's hosting the regional in Sioux City, Iowa. They're a very good team as well, in a super stacked conference. So, I mean, it's definitely going to be tough for them to get out of their respective regions and get to the Sweet 16. But they both have the talent to do it, and both have had great years. They've just been overshadowed by 2 top 5 teams in their conference, in College of Idaho on the men's side and Southern Oregon on the women's side.
When you look at the talent for both teams, we'll start with the Warrior men.
Yep.
They've really been, it seems, just running their offense, from the inside out. And because they have actually the Cascade Conference Player of the Year,
That's right,
in Alton Hamilton, sophomore. He was Freshman of the Year last year. Now he's Player of the Year, and that's not an accident. He has just been incredible, averaging a double-double, and just a lot of praise all around. Tribune was able to catch up with him, do a feature on him. You can read that at lewistontribune.com to learn all about Alton Hamilton and his upbringing in the Inland Empire, California there, and then coming up here to Lewiston, Idaho for college. But yeah, I mean, he's been the focal point of their offense for sure. And then they've got a bunch of shooters around him. John Lustig, who earned from Colfax, earned Freshman of the Year honors 2 years ago. He's in his junior year. Hasn't really slowed down. Been a pretty effective scorer and defender for them. Taden King can shoot those threes. Makari Morris can score and defend. And just they've got this really kind of deep like all these contributors and then someone who's really Dylan how do you pronounce his last name?
Dylan
Scaife.
Yep.
From Spokane, Ferris High School.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even starting at the beginning of the year. And then he's dropping 15 points in one half in the Cascade Conference playoff or tournament. And so just talk about kind of this LC State men's roster and how they've kind of reached this point.
Yeah, so interesting for them. I mean, they've had such a successful season. I mean, they're 24-7, and they're a 7th seed in the national tournament, and they have not been fully healthy for basically the entire year. You mentioned Alton Hamilton, and he's been great, but his backup, who is supposed to play huge minutes off the bench and also kind of play, I think, in the starting lineup as more of that power forward or center, however you want to flip those two around. Grayson Hunt from Pullman, he hurt his foot, I think, in December or maybe early January, early on in conference play, and he's been out for the season, I think, since. I don't think there's a chance that he's coming back. So the Warriors have had to adjust a little bit and change their lineup and how they play a little bit, where Alton Hamilton's really a lot of times the only true big man on the floor, and they're kind of playing 4 guards around one guy in the middle. So they've experimented with a couple of lineups throughout the year of who would be that 4th guard to kind of fill in that role. And late in the season, you mentioned Dylan Scaife. He's been a huge contributor for LC. I think he started the last 9 games of the year, and really a nice piece for them. A guy who really only shoots open shots, only takes good looks, and he's a really good shooter from 3-point land. His stats have looked really good this back half of the year since he's been thrown into the starting lineup. He's also a good defender, which is key for this Warrior team because they can score. It's a very complete offensive team, especially when they can hit their threes from the outside. This team can score with some of the best in the country. It's can they defend? Can they be physical and slow you down on the other side? Dylan Scaife's come off. I guess I say he came off the bench, but now he's in the starting lineup. He's given them that presence, so that's been big. You mentioned Alton Hamilton. He's been awesome this year, obviously the Conference Player of the Year. His growth as a passer has been huge this year because, I mean, especially playing the 4-around-1 style and not really having a big man that plays a ton of minutes, right? They have Josh Salguero behind him, but he's not really playing more than like 10 minutes per game. When they're in that situation, I mean, he's getting double teamed all the time, and he's gotten a lot better at identifying where the double team is coming from and who's open. And he's been racking up assists like crazy. As of late, he's had a couple games with 6 or 7 assists, so he's been great as a passer. John Lustig's been dynamite down the stretch this year. I mean, he's had a good season overall, but over the last like 10 games, I mean, he's, I think, averaging like close to 17 per game or something. I mean, he can get to the rim one-on-one whenever he wants. He's a really, really fun player to watch. Obviously, it's cool that he's local kid. He's from Colfax. He's been great. And then, I mean, yeah, this is a really deep team. You mentioned Makari Morris can certainly score it on any given night. He's a great 3-point shooter. He's got that teardrop floater. That's his signature shot, right in that like 15 to 8-foot range where he just pulls up on 2 feet and drops it over your head. Yeah, this is a loaded team, and they can score it with anybody. It's just going to be a question of can they hit their threes to really be able to score it efficiently on you, and can they be physical and defend against some of the better teams in the NAI, which they're going to face a couple of them this weekend.
Certainly. That'll certainly be a fun little test for them and for Warriors fans to watch. For the women's team, they're also pretty deep. There's a lot of names that jump off the page. Totally. Ellie Sander joined the 1,000 point, 500 rebound club this year from Spokane. She's been the leading scorer, 13.6 points per game. and just really a senior leader that they've all kind of rallied around.
Yeah.
You have look at Satara Bird, 41% from deep. She can liable to shoot 3 threes a game or whatnot, and just be really impressive in that regard, and then pass it really well. And then Darren Herring as well. Getting a lot of action and defending well too, especially in the post. And so talk about this when you look. I mean, there's other names too, and there's a lot of local connections too. And it just what about this Warrior women's team really jumps off the page to you?
Well, I mean, first of all, you mentioned Darian Herring. I mean, she has been just outstanding on the defensive end this year. I mean, I think she still leads the NAI in blocks. I know coming into maybe the last week of the season or the quarterfinals or semifinals of the Cascade Conference tournament, she was leading the NAI in blocks. She's outstanding. I don't know how she was not considered for Cascade Conference Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, if you're leading the NAI in blocks, because she's not just blocking shots. I mean, she's really good at playing positional defense. She also gets a ton of steals. This whole Warriors team gets a ton of steals, and they get on the passing lanes really well. Mentioned that 2-3 zone. They've really kind of settled into it and figured out how to, I guess, cover up some of the holes that they were dealing with in the middle of the season. Their defense has been awesome, and I mean, you hold Southern Oregon to 56 points in the championship game. You got to feel pretty good about yourself, because there are not many better offensive teams in the country than the Southern Oregon Raiders. So they've been great on the defensive side. Darian Herring's been awesome. They've got a really good guard trio. You mentioned Satara Bird. Great ball handler, can find a couple different ways to score, and she's one of their best three-point shooters, as you mentioned. Peyton Hymas is a really good ball handler and passer for this team. She's been a leader for them, and Ellie Sander kind of just does a little bit of everything for LC. She's tremendous on the defensive side, always giving the effort, getting in passing lanes. She picks up a ton of steals, leads the Warriors in steals. I think she might lead the conference in steals.
For sure, yeah, 94
as
steals
well. Yeah. And obviously she can score it as well. She's a little bit streaky sometimes, shooting the basketball. Some nights she can be really just on from three-point land. Sometimes, not so much, but she's been great. And then they have a lot of depth coming off the bench too, to be able to provide sparks on any given night, and that's been big for them as well. They've got Matea Green, who's a senior, which she starts. She's been big in her role. They've got Tatum Brager, who's a really good three-point shooter and has given them sparks a couple of times this year. They've got Kendall Wallace from Clarkston, who's had a couple of big games and can really shoot it from three-point land. They really deep team. For them, I mean, they've been playing so good on the defensive side. The question for the Warriors is, can they hit threes from beyond the arc? Because if they're hitting their threes, I mean, in the ballpark of 35% and above, they are a complete offense that can certainly score from the inside and score from the outside. And they're going to be really tough to stop, but we'll see. That's kind of been the it factor for them to beat the better teams that they face this year and the better teams in the Cascade Conference. They need to be knocking down shots from the outside.
Awesome. Well, we're really looking forward to it, Austin, and we're excited to listen to the games as well.
Yeah.
They're an hour apart, so 2 different stations, but all covered locally. And so the men at 5, right, and the women at 6. Where can we listen to those games?
Yeah, so the men's game is at 5. They're taking on St. Francis from Fort Wayne, Indiana, Friday, 5 o'clock. We're going to have that one because the 2 games are on at the same time. It's a little bit of a weird situation that we don't normally deal with. We'll have the men's game on the River 105.1 FM here in Lewiston. You can also listen if you go online to koze.com. You can find the link there to listen to the men's game if you don't have a radio on you or you're not in your car. Also, then for the women's game, that'll be at 6 o'clock. They'll take on Columbia, Missouri, the 11 seed. That game at 6. They're playing that one in Sioux City, Iowa. And you can listen to that one where we normally have the Warriors games on Talk Radio KOZE. That's 95.5 FM and AM 950 here in Lewiston, as well as online, again, at koze.com. So we'll have live coverage of those games and hopefully a deep run for the Warriors that goes into Saturday and hopefully on to a final sight.
Friday night at 5, and then at 6, be sure to tune in to your Warriors. Maybe get 2 radios and make that investment so you can bounce back and forth. They're playing on top, pretty much on top of each other, but it's going to be a fun weekend for Warrior basketball. And so, Austin, really appreciate you coming on and giving us a little preview of what's to come.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on.
Welcome back to the Final Whistle, Lewiston Tribune Sports Podcast. I'm Sam Taylor, sports reporter of the Lewiston Tribune, here with our sports editor, the big boss, Stephan Wiebe. Steph, thanks for being here.
Awesome. Yeah, excited to be here. Glad we're kicking this thing off. And excited to talk some basketball.
And so we're here to talk about the teams that in our area that made their state final and won. We're going to focus on the Kendrick Tigers, this year's 2A boys basketball state champions. It was kind of a phenomenal season for Kendrick. They started 7-7. They ended up rattling off, 13 straight wins, and then, getting to the championship game and beating Kamei, a team they lost to twice in the regular season, beat the district title, and then beat again the state title. When you look at this Tigers season, just what's their secret sauce, and how is Kendrick able to do it again?
I mean, it's a very good question. What a season for Kendrick. I guess first off, just the big point with them is moving up to the 2A level this year. How is that going to look for them across multiple sports? So dominant at 1A, formerly 1A D2. Now they're 2A, which used to be called 1A D1. But moving up a classification. Didn't slow them down in football. They won the state title in football. And then they do it again in boys basketball as well. Like you said, a slow start to the season for them. They're also missing, Nathan Twite, one of their best players, is injured the whole season. Slow start. It was looking like also a very tough White Pine League with teams like Lapway, the Kamei, Logos this year. It was looking like it could almost be anybody in that mix. Outside of Kamei was really the most consistent team. But then Kendrick just turns it on at the end of the season, beats Kamei after losing to him twice, like you said, beats them in the 2 games that matter most, the district championship and then the state championship over the weekend, beat them 66-49, and another state championship trophy for Kendrick High School. Just an incredible end of the season for those guys.
And we encourage you, if you haven't read the story by our own Cody Wentz about Kendrick's win, go ahead and check that out at lmtribune.com. And in that story, Cody details really how Kendrick's win happened, and that Kamei had the lead and, was kind of doing a little history on Kamei. I guess first we'll talk about Kamei and the season they had. You mentioned, obviously we talked about they beat them twice, beat Kendrick twice in the regular season. They have Dave Clute, who's a College of Idaho commit. What was really special about Kamei this year, and what makes this kind of just tough to swallow?
Yeah, well, like you said, what a year for Kamei. Regular season champions. They won started the season with a 20-something winning streak. Weren't losing to anybody in their league, and then lost a couple games down the stretch, but immediately turned it around. Won, like I mentioned just a minute ago, lost to Kendrick in their district championship game, but then Kamei turned right around and played their way into the state tournament, played their right way all the way to the state championship for a rematch. You got to give Kamei a lot of credit this season. Regular season champs, often number 1 in the polls all year, the media poll. State runner up is also an incredible accomplishment for those guys. They have a little bit of a curse of second place. It seems like Kamei all time is 0-6 now in state championship games. That's a lot of second place trophies. That's better than a lot of teams. But still looking for that first place after this year. But still a great season for them, and I really like what their coach Aaron Skinner said. One of the things he said is just happy that the White Pine League's bringing up 2 trophies back up to the north. It just kind of shows how good basketball is in our area, and we kind of take it for granted sometimes, maybe covering these great teams. And kind of we know how good they can be year in and year out. Obviously, Lapway, a team that's won a million state titles and didn't even get to state this year because of how good the league was. So Coach Skinner just giving some credit to Kendrick and happy to see the trophies coming back up here. But yeah, what a good season for them in the championship game. Dave Clute had a double. Let's see here. I believe it was 23 points and 13 rebounds. So no game for him. But a lot of good guys on this KMI team. Matthew Oatman, a bunch of guys we can maybe talk about, and obviously we need to talk about some Kendrick guys as well. But yeah, a good season for KMI as well.
Absolutely. And then you look at that how the championship game went down and how Kendrick really KMI was at the opening of the fourth quarter, right? They scored what would be their final basket of the game as Kendrick just rattled off, 16 straight points and to win 66-49. When you look at this Kendrick team, and who are some of the names to know Kendrick? Yeah, when you look at this Kendrick team, what are some names to know on the Tigers, and who's the group of guys that was really able to put this together?
Well, anytime teams are doing this well, it's multiple guys. Raleigh Rodesender is a big guy for them. He's hit 3-pointers all throughout the season. Had several big ones in the state championship game. Maddox Kirkland as well. Multiple guys for these guys. We'll have to maybe come back to some of their stats. Let's see here.
Yeah, it looks like Max Kirkland with 14 points. Cade Soflo with 10. Raleigh Rodesender, as you mentioned, 25 points and a perfect 5 for 5 from the foul line. And yeah, just a lot of. And Hudson Kirkland with 13. So you got a lot of these guys hitting double figures and spreading the ball around. And you talk about, Raleigh, and a lot of these guys are on the football team. Max Kirkland's the starting quarterback. Right. Raleigh's a wide receiver, and they connected several times in the state playoffs. And so this is a group that is in the habit of winning, as their coach Steve Kirkland said in this piece. And it's easy to see why. They down a little bit early, they came back, and then they just didn't take their foot off the gas, storming all the way to the win. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, and I like that quote from Kirkland. Winning can be a habit, just paraphrasing, but losing can be a habit. Winning can be a habit, and Kendrick's in the habit of winning, and that culture there, that they know how to win games.
When we look at this, anything we've missed about Kendrick KMI? Anything else that you'd like to add?
I don't think so. We could go on and on about these teams. Two great teams, and yeah, nice to see White Pine Link showing out, winning a couple trophies in boys basketball.
Awesome. And so we'll move on to some of the other teams. We had 3 girls basketball teams in the area reach their respective state finals. Unfortunately, they each fell short of claiming that state trophy, but each took home second place. That was the Garfield Palouse girls in the Washington State 1B tournament. That was the Genesee Bulldogs in the Idaho 1A 2 weeks ago. And then the Prairie Pirates in the Idaho 2A tournament. And so a lot of things to say about each of these teams. We'll kind of be a little quick on each one. But for Garpal, this was a young team. They're graduating 1 senior. They're returning all of the championship point scorers are coming back to this team. And it's one of those situations where they just met a team that had been there before. Nia Bay has been to each of the last 4 state 1B championships. They've won now each of the last 3. And so I asked their coach, Garrett Parrish, do you think this could be the beginning? Could you guys be Nia Bay 4 years ago, where Nia Bay, lost 4 years ago, and then each of the 3 years since they've been back and they've won. And so he said that that's certainly a possibility, but you have a lot of teams, Waterville, Mansfield, who they beat in the semis to get to the final. Also is returning a lot of young players. Nia Bay's not going anywhere. So it's a really packed 1B field of competition in Washington. But Garfield's right there in it. And they kind of flew under the radar. We didn't really cover them until the end of the year. Obviously, calling them and talking to them every week. But we were able to get to Palouse, get to their gym, and see the passion in that community for basketball. And they won the state title in 2008. And you can see the banners on the wall, a lot of pride in that community. And this was certainly another year where you saw, he was talking about how a lot of the businesses, Garrett Parrish was telling me about how a lot of the businesses in Palouse closed their doors, on Saturday or over the past few days in order to be in Spokane, or if they couldn't close, they had the game on TV. And so that's what we love about, covering these small town basketball teams, is that it really matters to these communities, and that was clear with the Garpel girls.
Yeah, great run for the Garfield Palouse girls basketball team. You know, some of those Washington side tournaments are just kind of a different animal as far as the number of games they have to play. A little bit bigger brackets sometimes. They're playing, you know, crossover games and seeding games, and it kind of seems like those tournaments are just so long instead of those 3 days like it is on the Idaho side. But they just a big run for them. Garfield Palouse girls, they lost in their district championship game. I believe that was to Yakima Tribal.
Yes.
And then turn around and beat them and get some revenge in the state tournament to go all the way to the championship game. You know, a great all around season for them. I think they can be super happy with their season. They were not, you know, one of the top. They were the three. Were they 3 seed?
I think so.
I think they were the 3 seeds, so not one of the top 2 seeds, and to go to the state championship, again, bring home a trophy. They can definitely hold their heads high, and like you said, a young team that could be, you know, should be in the mix again next year.
Absolutely. And then speaking of, you know, young teams, this one, you know, it's always tough when seniors leave. They're such a big part of each of these teams. But these next 2 teams for Idaho, they have kind of set Genesee and Prairie. The seniors that are graduating set the example, and they have, you know, some younger players coming behind them that can continue that winning tradition. I'll start with Genesee. Genesee, you know, they moved down and with the reclassification, but they were still, you know, a pretty remarkable team. Coach Greg Hardy runs a great program, just, you know, a couple miles up Highway 95 from Lewiston, and their final record, they only lost 2 games. The championship game was their second loss of the season, and their first loss was to Lapway. They kept some of those old league rivalries alive. They played Kamei and beat Kamei, who was pretty good on the girls 2A side, and then they played Lapway, lost to Lapway. And then other than that, they were undefeated. And so it was a pretty remarkable run by Genesee. They went undefeated, 10-0 in their league, and then into the state final. And they just kind of met their match with Rockland. But with Genesee, just kind of anything to add on the Bulldog season and what really stood out?
No, kind of the same thing. You just a really solid season for them. Again, another team that can hold their heads up high. Yeah, it's second place, nothing to snuff at there. You know, star player for them would be Chloe Greaser. Week in and week out was one of the nominees for Prep Athlete of the Week, a high scorer for them, and great season by her and her team. I believe she'll be back. She's just a junior.
Yeah.
But yeah, good season for them. Get a second place trophy for the Genesee girls basketball.
Especially to see a group that, you know, we've covered them in the state volleyball tournament. They're used to, or the district volleyball tournament. They're used to making some noise in volleyball, and to see them carry that over sports into girls basketball was pretty cool. And then kind of further up the highway to go over to Cottonwood, we had Prairie reach, and what a remarkable year for Prairie, with Coach Lori Mader there on the Prairie leading her team. It's always another nice part of small town basketball. Lori played for Prairie. She won with Prairie, and you know, now she's back leading the team, and she has been. And it was definitely a landmark year for Prairie that they can certainly build on. And it came with some success. You know, there's another similar to Kamei boys who have kind of, you know, come away from state time after time with those runner-up trophies, and they do again this year. But to see them, you know, make a good run at it with a lot of talent, the Schumachers, Lexi and Kylie, and then to see them with just the other talent, Sage Elvin also. They kind of ran their offense from the inside out. Kylie and Sage in the post, putting up, you know, double doubles or, you know, lots of points and defending really well. And then Lexi was liable to shoot. They had a lot of shooters who could, you know, make a lot of those threes, and so they were multiple in that way, and that they were hard to stop. And that ended up, Lapway had been kind of their bane, of the rival that had always kind of gotten the better of them, and they were able to split the regular season series. I saw Lapway actually, you know, get that 50-46 win over Prairie in Lapway. That was a big deal for the Wildcats, who also had a decent year. And then to see Prairie kind of get their revenge, win at home in their first encounter, and then get the revenge for the state title. that meant a lot because from my understanding, just looking at the history books, it's been Lafway and Prairie at the end of the year quite a bit, and usually Lafway's gotten the upper hand and it's certainly special to see the Pirates, have a year like they did.
Definitely, both Genesee and Prairie teams that won their district titles in the 1A and 2A White Pine League respectively there, and another team again second place, nothing to snuff at. It always kind of hurts to fall in the championship. That's kind of the worst. I was one of those teams in back when I was in high school, not in basketball, but in track, we were second place, and it kind of stings at the time. But I think afterwards, you can look back and be proud of that accomplishment. So yeah, it was the Prairie fell to Oakley in their championship game. That was 62-51. Going back to Genesee, they fell to Rockland in their championship. That was 56-39. But overall, great season for Prairie, like you said. They're kind of a bigger team. They have some height on their team that really played well for them.
Yeah.
And a lot of different players mixing it in for them. Very deep team. And I definitely expect them to, even with losing some seniors, just the tradition they have there, can never count them out year in and year out.
All righty. Well, Steph, really appreciate you joining for the first and helping put this together for bringing this back. It's a really fun new chapter for the sports department. Any closing words or kind of what readers can expect from Tribune Sports, especially as we enter spring sports season?
No, excited. Well, first off, thanks for having me here, Sam. Thanks for kind of being the host of this show. Excited to get it going. A lot of exciting, basketball season's kind of wrapping up, getting into spring sports. We'll just dive full into that and keep the train going. One thing that comes to mind, and we can maybe, it'd be cool to maybe even have her on here or circle back, but just thinking about Clarkston losing a couple coaches retired recently for Clarkston, and it'd be awesome to get them on here or just kind of maybe dedicate some time to them, maybe in a future show down the road. But Debbie Saboto retiring from girls basketball, another one of our great area coaches, and so I'm sure the Bantams are kind of sad to see her go. They had another great season, good runs at district and state for the Bantams, and then Bryson By with the Clarkston football team also retiring. Both of them kind of wanting to spend a little bit more time with family and stuff like that. So just want to mention those two coaches, and again, maybe we can circle back and do a little, maybe even have them on at some point or whatever. But yeah, basketball wrapping up. Excited for baseball, and we'll see. Still got the LCSC or LC State men and women are still alive, so basketball's still going. Vandal men are actually playing right now as we're talking, so we'll see. Still a little bit of basketball left, but looking forward to spring sports. And Sam, thanks for having me on the show.
Sweet. Yeah. Thank you, Steph. Be sure to listen to this episode and future episodes of The Final Whistle on YouTube and anywhere you find your podcasts, Spotify and Apple, I believe. And then also at lewistontribune.com. And be sure to read our work and look at our photos. Our photo team's amazing. And we sent our photographer down to Boise, so she got some amazing shots of the teams, boys teams that were down there in Boise. So not just Kendrick and Kamiai, but Nez and our other teams that were down there.
Yeah, Lewiston, obviously.
Yeah, Lewiston, Orofino. And so, for that and more, be sure to check out the sports section at lewistontribune.com and pick up the paper every day. And then it's out. And really appreciate you for listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.